Hi, this is Dr. Scott, and today we're going to get into Paul's question. This is about business loan forgiveness. Now, I'm going to tell you first off, I'm going to put my email up here. This is an email that you guys can utilize to put more questions out because this is the last question that I actually had. And Paul gets the last question of this one. Now, it doesn't mean if you guys have more, I'm going to let you kind of, pop them out to me. Okay. But I'm going to ask you though to look at look at Dr. Scott's short questions. Some of them are not short, answers, but many of them are. This won't be a very, very long one with that too. But let's talk about what Paul asks. Okay, so Paul, a small business owner in North Carolina, and says, "Want to thank you for what you're doing. I follow you for some long time frame here. So I have a question about a business debt, like an EIDL loan that we were taking out in COVID, so we as a business owner can survive. Excuse me. Will they be forgiven or eliminated with Nasara? Do you see Nasara announcing it in some way as once he takes it in office with that too? So let's bring up a couple interesting parts here. We're going to bring up on the screen what EIDL loans. I actually typed in there if you want to see this EIDL loan forgiveness. I don't know why it went this way, but it's kind of interesting here. So one of the things that happens with that particular type of loan is that the EIDLs, obviously they ended in pretty much 21. They were they were for a 20 and 21 timeframes, as well as the PPP loans. Okay, now actually we got a very small one for my wife, and for her business model, it was a very small amount that we could actually get. And it's funny because like the payment's like $5 a month, and we haven't even cut into the interest of it. It's like a 5% loan, and I don't care because even if I never got it paid back, does that make sense? If I never got it paid off by debt forgiveness, $5 a month is a meaningless number in an overall basis. Now, you might say you're going to pay back a massive amount more if debt forgiveness never came, but that's not that's not really an issue I kind of think about at this time because in the near future it's going to be off with that too. It's interesting that some of the statements related to this are that loans were funded through working capital for normal business operations, whereas the PPP loans had to be for 80% of it was for the usage of just employees. So this would be for any kind of issue that you're trying to deal with. Um, but it actually has an interesting statement. EIDL advances do not need to be repaid. So Paul, that's one thing I would look at is, was it being repaid? Okay. Kind of interesting point. And that was a thing you might want to look at. And it does have, on the direct site itself, at the SBA site. And remember, SBA was done by the is done by the Treasury. What's such a strange thing about now the EIDL loans are directly through Treasury because they're real interesting because EIDL loans are payback. I mean, something you have to pay back, right, with that interest kind of loan. But normally, SBA loans are me picking up a loan through a local bank of some type. So, for instance, you have it doesn't matter if it's the big banks or small banks, but you might go down to a local bank, whatever, and you would fill out the forms for an SBA loan. And so, what in essence an SBA loan is trying to be, I'll be off the screen here. What an SBA loan is, it's a business loan that instead of having maybe a higher rate of interest or a shorter time frame or more restrictive kind of things, the SBA underwrites it a bit, and there is a discount a bit for those amounts. And so there's it's in essence it's a third party, but the bank itself is making money off of your repayment. Okay, that's how SBA works. And it's funny because I was never able to get an SBA. Now, remember, I've told you, some of you people know that, over the years, I was 90% debt to income. And I was looking at that as a possibility as a second loan. And I asked the question when I wasn't allowed to get it, even though my credit was unbelievably good. It always has been good because I would pay for things other than that 90% time frame. But by the time I was asking for this, they were saying, well, the problem is your debt to income was the business debt to income was a problem. But really, I hadn't filled out much of that information. So they must have found that. But secondly, they said it's your personal guarantees that are in the way of this. And I said, so the debt to income is an issue, yeah, but we could got around that one a bit. But your personal guarantees are a big problem. Now, I had personal guarantees with these hearing aid manufacturers, right? And so, and it makes sense. I mean, personal guarantees, what they are is I go out of business, then all the rest of the assets that might be available are picked off by the personal guarantee of that first level. So if you had two sets of personal guarantees, it doesn't make any sense because they wouldn't get anything, right? And so an incredibly risky loan, and probably for the most part, I've never seen anyone really do it, as I checked that out a little further. And so, so I never could get an SBA type of loan until the EIDLs and the PPP loans. So the EIDLs we're only directly through Treasury. I mean, when you get the form, it's definitely just from Treasury, right? And then you see the PPP loans that were absolutely forgivable over a time frame, over a short time frame with that. You didn't have to pay it back at all. Now, if you screwed up and used it wrong, and they said you did do it wrong, well, then there would be a payment kind of penalty. Now, there are companies, there were some companies that did that and used it for wrong things. And when they couldn't prove that they used it for payroll, or specifically they had dropped a whole bunch of employees, they had to pay that loan back. Or like the NFL tried to get a PPP loan and they were given it and it was ripped away from them. And it was real funky how some of these ones did. They got millions upon millions of dollars. It was never meant for them. It was only meant for small businesses like Paul and I. Okay. So the EIDL is still kind of breaking a lot of the rules in a lot of ways. Now, let me show you this one as well. A business kind of, there's a lot of hidden things that happen with business loans. They're not just, when you do a personal loan, you're putting yourself on the line, getting a car, whatever that might be, right? But with a business loan, they're looking at your personal situation and your business kind of thing. And I'll show you something about that in a second. So you got repayment kind of capabilities, X dollars, X, Y interest over a certain number of months. Okay, anytime you see that, it's definitely a compound level of interest with that too. And so the payment can happen over a time frame, but if its loan is repaid out on before the maturity, there are some type steep penalties because they really don't want you to pay it off too early with that too. So you can have penalties on them, whereas non-business loans don't normally have a penalty for paying it off early. It's because these loans are pretty big loans. So, businesses can take out 600, 800, several $1 million, in these kinds of loans. So they really don't want you to pay off early, even if you could, right? Well, some people will do it anyway because they don't care with that. But other people are going, it is something I have to pay. For instance, if you were working for a small business and you bought your, business partner out, or they were retiring, right? Or whatever that system is, you might utilize that as the buyout, point. And that's a very, very common loan that happens all the time. And so it's a pretty big number. So you're trying to buy out your partner and let's say you got $1 million. And so that's a very significant payment that you're paying every single month. And I see a lot of people that will get really kind of excited, at the end of their time frame with that too. So there's origination, there's points, there's all kinds of repayment kind of points out there. Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to give you a background of this. And I'm going to tell you, there's some weird things that didn't really fix. So this is an SBA, and I'm going to talk about this later with Mark Z tonight. You guys are going to watch this next week, but I'm going to be talking about this quite a bit. Business loans are very unique. So you have to do the lender's creditability. So especially if it's $500,000 and beyond, you have to have a business debt schedule, right? And a personal financial statement. I mean, most people have never filled those out. I've done them so many times, it's not funny. And I mean, it's like all these things, all the other business owners, spouses, everyone out there that you might have, even, must be signed by the spouse, even if they're not a guarantor. Um, I mean, and it's a very detailed, what you make, what you have, all of your assets versus your debts. So, you have a $40,000 car, it might be worth 25,000, but you still have $12,000 left to pay on it, kind of thing. So you'd say, $25,000 worth car with $12,000 payment, and they're going to be calculating that where you don't see that on the personal kinds of loans, right? And then, so you're going to have the income statement and the balance sheet of the company. Now, some people don't do this, but I mean, I did it all the time, so it was no big deal, right? But you also have to have income statement and federal tax returns too. Cash flow. They're looking at your abilities to bring in cash flow. So even if you're profitable, they're looking at your balance sheet to see what your abilities. And seller financials. So if you're selling a business, an existing business, they're wanting to see the person's ability with that loan too. So in essence, they're part of a guarantor. And then we have current income, business stock purchases, really interesting. Pro forma balance sheets. So there's, which means a balance kind of things. Real estate agreements. The person might have a real estate agreement as well. For a purchase kind of thing, appraisals of that thing. See, they're going to start they ask a bunch of different documentation most people are not used to with that too. And so that's why these loans are very detailed and difficult with that. Now, one of the things that we know about loans, and I hear this all the time, so I'm going to answer some of you people asking about, loans. And sometimes you hear these loans and they're from weird corporations. Let me give you an example. Non-asset based loans, right? So they're not asset backed. So they're for instance, for hearing aids, for dental work or other kinds of things. A company called Care Credit. What they use is GE money. So so they're utilizing a different kind of company, General Electric, and you're going, well, this is weird. And so you might struggle with that, but if it's got compound interest, which means it's not like from another company kind of doing a loan and they say they're not a bank, that gets paid off. Now, so in the same way, we're talking about a treasury type of loan. That's a governmental loan, just like student loans. Now, one of the things that people hear all the time too, and again, I'm going to leave this on screen. You can ask some questions more as we finish up here. I just want you to kind of think about something else. The left through Joe Biden and all the different ideas of the Great Reset. And the Great Reset was kind of introduced to the world, at least in America, through Bernie Sanders, right? And it was talking about student loan forgiveness. And it has stirred up a lot of patriots saying, I don't believe in that. That should not be. You go to school, you should pay your loan off, right? And so there's a lot of conversations about that. And the reality is the loan forgiveness the debt forgiveness kind of issues is not trying to give something to some people and not to other people. This is just a full on loan forgiveness, right? And again, people always tell me all the time, like, that's not fair. I didn't, I mean, I don't have any debt. I shouldn't be, penalized. Again, I've answered that on other areas here you can always look at. But here, yes, Paul, that is one of those things that will happen. How will it get announced? You might not see an exact announcement. It might be like some of the executive orders you're seeing, just an idea. But it would happen really after the gold-backed currency is kind of set. Now we also don't know if that will be announced or not announced. I have a suspicion it's not going to be announced too. So it gives you a little background and some understanding about what happens there too. So again, you can always email me with that. You have more questions, like and subscribe. It really makes a difference for me. I know people ask you that all the time. But you know what? I don't ask anything from you other than like and subscribe, and share it with your friends too. That helps me too. Thanks so much.